Across the animal kingdom, in order to become an adult, an animal has to master 4 core competencies. First, they need to learn to stay safe. Secondly, they need to learn to navigate social hierarchies. And the third is that they need to learn to communicate sexually. And the final core competency, they need to learn to be self-reliant. First core competency is staying safe. Animals need to learn how to stay safe. Now, this is a huge issue because when you're a juvenile, a bird or a mammal, and you're protected by parents, you are relatively safe because they're around. But when your body gets big enough to be outside of parental care and supervision, but you lack experience, you're in deep danger. It's called being predator naive. The king penguins who live in South Georgia Island, which is about 1,000 miles off of the coast of Antarctica, every December, the new adolescents walk to the edge of the water and they have to dive in to these frigid waters and for the first time by themselves go off and find their own food and really start adult life. And the juveniles, so the pre-adolescents, won't go near the water. But something changes when they become adolescents. What is changing? Their brain biology. Their brain biology is making them be bigger risk takers and more impulsive and watching what their peers do to kind of mirror that. In other words, that brain biology that we think is such a problem in humans is actually promoting the necessary behavior. It's driving them into the critically important developmental transition into adulthood. They need to enter the water. The neurochemicals that are associated with rising mood and falling mood in humans track with status in animals. When an animal rises in status, what we would consider maybe popularity, there are pleasant neurochemicals that are released. When they fall in status, the opposite happens. There is 2 colonies of hyenas. There are 2 groups that study spotted hyenas. One of them is in the Ngorongoro crater in Tanzania. And we tell the story of one of the hyenas who was a young hyena and how he navigated social hierarchies and dealt with this issue of what we call kind of animal privilege. And the reason that we think this is important for not just adolescents themselves, but parents and all of us, is that if we can understand how this works, what are the factors that shape advantage and disadvantage, then we can have a better understanding how to create structures and schools and even societies where there's more opportunity, where there's greater equity. We were looking at lots of behavior in animal adolescence, and some of the most heartbreaking and recognizable behavior of an adolescent animal is their early attempts at courtship. The sort of fumbly dances and rituals that you see you recognize what it will become, but you see that they're not there. Animals may reach puberty, but that does not mean that they start having sex right away. In fact, in a number of species that have been very well studied, for example, a couple of albatross species, Laysan albatross and Galapagos albatross, between the onset of puberty and when animals actually start to have sex, when they start to copulate, it can be 5 years. What are they doing during those 5 years? They are learning sexual communication. They're learning these dances and these these moves, which are signaling, and they're practicing and practicing and practicing. So there's a lag between a body that can make offspring, right, that is producing viable sperm and viable eggs. There's a lag between that and when the animal is really ready, in a sense. And the corollary of that is that sex is easy. Copulation is easy. Sexual communication, which is courtship, is much harder. And I think that can help inform human sex ed, where we tend to emphasize, at least when my kids were in middle school and high school, when they were taking I guess it's called health class. They don't call it sex ed anymore. But a lot of it was about, putting a condom on a banana and protecting yourself from sexually transmitted infections and pregnancy, all of which could not be more important, obviously. But when you kind of look at what you really kind of need in a whole life, learning to communicate sexually, which is not just about expressing what you want and who you desire, but really learning to understand the feedback that's coming at you and processing that takes a long time, and that maybe we should think about having our sex ed courses focusing maybe a little less on copulation and more on courtship. One of the biggest challenges as a parent is knowing how much to help, right? So you have an urge to help when your child at any age, needs something, but you also recognize on some level that if you help too much, there's the, enabled disabled phenomenon, right? You want to know what that proper place is. And here again, how wild animals move through adolescence can teach us a lot. There are a number of other species, and there's so many colorful stories and wonderful descriptions of this, but my favorite are the Spanish imperial eagles, where the parents, the mothers, are very gentle generally and wonderfully kind of nurturing. That's maybe that's a little bit of an anthropomorphism. But if their adolescent offspring, right, their fledge, seems reluctant to leave the nest, they start to amp things up and they actually start to have conflict. And that conflict can actually escalate into actual violence, where there's a move that the Spanish imperial mother will put her talons together and kind of dive bomb to the nest where the adolescent is and literally thunk the adolescent out of the nest. So sometimes you need to offer extra care. Sometimes you need to give your offspring a push, a boot out the door. We humans, all of us know people who are sort of chronologically adults, right? They are, in their 30s or in their 40s, 50s, etc. But they have not mastered those four core competencies, right? They don't know how to keep themselves safe. They don't know how to navigate social hierarchies. They cannot communicate sexually, and they aren't self-reliant, or they aren't self-reliant. We all know people like that. In the wild, if an animal makes it through adolescence, its rigors and its challenges, what is crafted by that beautiful critical period is a pretty majestic adult.